21st Platoon. Hard drop. Secure our landing zone.
Understood.
Over the target in 5.
Hang on to your helmet.
Alright recruits, welcome back to From ODST to Helldiver. Today's video is going to cover some of the blue stratagems in the game, and specifically we're going to cover the 16 current support weapons that do not require a backpack slot. For those of you keeping track from the loadout video, you have access to several different arms in a normal mission. You have a primary weapon, you have a secondary weapon, you've got throwables, you have armor with a passive, and you have 4 stratagems. But when you're actually in-game moving around, you have access to a backpack slot and a support weapon slot. Specifically today, and I want to make sure this distinction is clear, we are talking about the support weapons that do not have a backpack slot, meaning you don't need to use a backpack slot to reload these weapons. There are currently 16 of them in game, and we're going to go ahead and dive into those right now. Alright, we are at the loading screen here, and if we're looking at stratagems, you can see down here we have these blue stratagems under the supply category, and you can see there are several options. Blue may have the most options to choose from, but we are focused on these first 16 items here. All of them have various different traits that we will dive into, but the main focus here is that they are all lacking the item trait of backpack. Every one of these items does not have a backpack slot. So with that aforementioned thing out of the way, let's go ahead and dive on in with these first 4 weapons. So we have the One True Flag, is a support weapon, comes down in a hell pod, is a melee weapon, and is also one-handed. Next up we have the MG43 machine gun, support weapon, comes down in a hell pod, is medium armor penetrating, and has a stationary reload. Next up we have the Stalwart, which is a support weapon, comes down in a hell pod, and is light armor penetrating. And then the last of the machine guns for the support weapons is the MG206 heavy machine gun. It is a support weapon, comes down in a hell pod, and is heavy armor penetrating, and also has a stationary reload. Alright, now that we've talked a little bit about what weapons we're covering and what their stats are, I'm going to go ahead and dive into the mission and show them off. Alright guys, we are in the game, and I'm going to begin calling these in, starting with the One True Flag.
Sending down support weapon.
Machine gun. Stalwart.
Sending down support weapon.
Of course, the heavy machine gun. Now, my support weapons come in almost instantaneously as I call them in. That is because I got an upgrade for my ship. You guys are probably going to wait a little bit longer when you call yours in initially. Let's start off with the One True Flag. It has a stabbing attack. You can hold down the right trigger as if looking through the iron sights, and just now, it is fairly decent at stabbing, and if you have the right armor on to increase your melee damage, it can be quite effective, and it has a large range. But it is relatively a single target weapon. It's fantastic, though. A lot of fun when I use this. You will want to have the increased melee damage so that you're one-shotting all these bugs. And I do not recommend this against a couple different factions. The automatons, you're just going to have a rough time because they actually shoot at you. The flag is a little lackluster on that front, but against bugs, this is one of the not efficient, but very, very fun things to do. Additionally, if you have this unlocked, you can hold down on the D-pad and drop one true flag. And when you do, it will plant the flag wherever you stick it. That offers some great cinematography. Okay, that is just about everything I can talk about with the one true flag, other than the fact that it is one-handed, which means if you have the ballistic shield support weapon, you can hold up a shield while stabbing your enemies, which is an amazing playstyle. It's very, very fun. It is somewhat viable, though less efficient, obviously, than being able to shoot your enemies before they get close enough to eat you. But nonetheless, it's still a fun playstyle. Now, it is okay against the Illuminate, however, you will absolutely need some ranged weapons handy in order to deal with the flying enemies and a couple other things. So just keep that all in mind. It's very good against bugs, it's not good at all against automatons, and it is middling against the Illuminate. Alright, so we have our 3 machine guns here, and I'm going to start off actually with the Stalwart. It is the light armor pin machine gun. Some good fire rates. If we crouch, it has much better weapon handling, though it still has that weapon drag. We'll get familiar with when playing Helldivers. You cannot fire it while sprinting, it's not an SMG. And if you are on the belly, it still has some recoil, but is still very, very good when you're crouched. It has the best weapon handling of the 3 machine guns, but it has light armor pin. Now, one more thing to talk about is reloading. You can reload this machine gun while you're moving. It is light armor penetrating, so it's not going to get through most enemy armors, especially at higher difficulties, though I do think you're safe for the very easy difficulties. Getting away with light armor pin, it'll cut through just about everything. But just know in the future, when enemies start getting armored, this is going to be less effective. Now if we hold down the X, we have different options here. You can have a flashlight that's automatically on. It's not dark enough for it to come on right now, but when it is on, you can see this. I'm probably not going to talk about flashlights moving forward with this video. Just keep in mind they're all generally going to do the same thing, and most of the time I just have them off. Now, one more thing you probably noticed is to the right we have different RPMs, and this is rounds per minute. So you can adjust the fire rate of your machine gun here, the Stalwart. This is the slowest. This is medium. And this is turned all the way up. Now, obviously, faster fire rate means more damage, means more things die faster. However, it also means less bullets in your clip. You're going to run out much, much faster. You're going to have less sustained fire. Typically, medium's okay, but I tend to float around the 700 or the extreme depending on the situation. If it is a massive bug breach, I'd crank it up, and in my normal running around the maps, I go to 700. Feel free to mess with it at your leisure and adjust it however you like. Now that we have a new wave of enemies here, I'm going to go ahead and swap over to the regular machine gun. And as you can see here, it also has different RPMs, but it doesn't have a flashlight. We're going to go ahead and head over here, just get hip fire, crouch,
Get some!
and on my belt. Now, while you are zoomed here, you can also go ahead and use the scope. You can see this is what it's looking like. It's got a nice little red dot there. And that was the slowest RPM. Crank this up to medium. And then we'll go all the way up to 900. Now the Stalwart was shooting at a higher RPM at its highest stage, but it lacks the medium armor penetration that this machine gun has, which means this is going to take out most regular mobs on the map, stopping only for the most heavily armored enemies. Additionally, the reload is a stationary reload, which means when you make the attempt to reload, you will stop where you currently are in order to reload the weapon, which can be quite compromising. That is the biggest downside of these two machine guns, is the stationary reload. Now they share that trait with several other weapons, so don't think that they are unique in this or anything like that, but it is their biggest flaw. Now, the best alternative to sitting in place and reloading while a group of angry bugs eat your face is to just swap weapons. That being said, you want to use your support weapon most effectively. Typically, I will run to a safe distance or wait till the end of a fight before reloading one of these weapons, or if I see some miraculous sway in the middle of the fight, I'll make my attempt there. Next up, we have the heavy machine gun. And again, it has different RPMs and is slower than the other two. But where it lacks in fire rate, it makes up for in its bullets being more damaging and also being heavy armor penetrating, which means it's capable of taking down some of the biggest and toughest enemies. We crank this up to 750 RPM. It's gonna feel pretty crazy. The recoil is pretty intense on this, actually. Each bullet is actually going to be bigger in game, so you are going to feel that. I don't know if that makes too much sense to you guys, but that's how I can best describe it, I guess. Now, this is the hip fire recoil and accuracy. It's kind of nuts. This is crouched. And this is on my belly. Additionally, this is the scope here. And you can see there's quite a bit of sway as well on this thing. In fact, a massive amount of sway. A bit of drag. Now I am noticing I did forget one thing with the Stalwart, which is I didn't show what its sight looks like, but it is very similar to the others. Now, what I will say about these three machine guns here, these two typically feel like an actual support weapon that you can call in and utilize effectively. They do feel very powerful. They're much more powerful than most, if not all, primary weapons, possibly excluding some of the explosive ones. They are quite effective. Now the Stalwart is the little brother of these two and has a very unique playstyle, I suppose. It is part of unique loadouts and builds. So typically what I have found is the people that like the Stalwart like using it as their primary weapon. Which sounds a bit crazy, I know. But it has a massive fire rate, it has light armor penetrating, which most support weapons do not have, so it does kind of line up on those fronts with a regular assault rifle perhaps. But it has much higher ammo capacity, has these variable RPMs, and is quite effective at taking out whole groups of enemies. Now, typically what I see when people are running the Stalwart as their primary weapon, they swap the primary weapon out for some of those slower firing explosive primary weapons. And that's just an option. It is a fun playstyle as well, very similar to the Flag. I do think it's worth giving it a shot when you're playing, and probably when you get access to the Stalwart, it will be the best weapon available to you. But at higher ends of the game, I do think there are better support weapons in general than the Stalwart. But the Stalwart Eruptor combo is pretty good. The Stalwart Purifier combo is good. The Stalwart Exploding Crossbow is pretty good as well. They're very good at rush tactics and clearing out mobs while not focusing on things like Bile Titans. Okay, so I think that is it for these first 4. I'm going to go ahead and get back to the ship and move on to the next 4. Alright, back on the ship here in the loadout screen. We can take a look down here at the next 4 weapons, which is the Railgun, the Anti-Material Rifle, the Plas 45 Epoch, and the GL-21 Grenade Launcher. And for those watching, this is after the patch that kind of fixed the Epoch. So you get to see maybe the most recent version of the gun, though it may change in future patches. Alright, so let's dive into the item traits here. Now all of these are going to have the support weapon and Hellpod traits, so let's just focus on the unique aspects. The Railgun is anti-tank and has the Charge Up trait. The Anti-Material Rifle has only the Heavy Armor Penetrating trait. That's unique to it. Plas 45 Epoch has Explosive, Heavy Armor Penetrating, and Charge Up. And the Grenade Launcher here has Explosive and Medium Armor Penetrating. And now that we've covered some of these traits, I'm going to go ahead and select these, and I will see you in mission, and I'll show some of these off. Alright guys, we are in game here, and I'm going to go ahead and start things off with the Railgun. The Railgun is pretty nice of a weapon. It used to be the go-to support weapon for most players back in the day. This was long before I got here, so this is kind of just word of mouth what I've heard, but very, very good weapon. And then new weapons were introduced, and there were a couple updates here and there, and it's recently kind of fallen out of favor, I think, since I've been playing at least. Now you have 2 different options here. You have the safe and unsafe fire mode, which doesn't mean too much until you scope in. Now when we start to fire this weapon, we have to hold the trigger down to charge it up. And you're going to see there is a charge on the left and right. Now safe means it will stop at a certain threshold where it's at, and then fire. And you will notice on the bottom left with my ammo, I am completely out. That has taken up the entire bullet, and I have to reload. Fortunately, reloading is fairly quick, but this is basically a bolt action, heavy armor penetrating gun. Now if we switch the fire mode to unsafe, we go back here, I can start charging and get a much stronger shot off. Now, why is it unsafe, you might ask? Well, I will just hold it down and we will see. Not only did I get hit with that explosion, but the gun itself is gone. I no longer have it. So just keep that in mind with the two fire modes. If you are a fan of the railgun, you may want to keep it on safe, though you will have a less damaging result. So if you can get really good with the unsafe mode, that could be very, very nice. And I recommend you get good with it. Now, typically you would scope in to see that, but eventually, maybe with enough practice, you can kind of time it and not have to actually scope in to see where that overcharge is at. Alright, so that's the rail gun. Next up we have the anti-material rifle. Now, some of you may be looking at this and thinking to yourselves, wow, that right there is a sniper rifle. I have to point out, this is not a sniper rifle. This is an anti-material rifle. So what's the difference? Well, it has a decent scope. It's got some range.
How'd you like to taste
Can
of
fire
freedom?
through the enemies pretty well. If they are all in a straight line, I do think this goes through it. And if you see here, we have different scopes. So we have a 50-meter scope, a 100-meter scope, and of course the 200-meter scope, which I know, sniper rifle. So far, everything I have shown you has been very sniper rifle. But if the enemy is close enough, and you feel the need, watch this fire rate.
Nothing in the chamber.
Yeah. So, I guess technically it is a sniper rifle, but it is a semi-auto, fast pace, very devastating rifle. It can blow the doors off of different objective areas and things like that, and do a lot of damage. It's a very, very good weapon. Now it is a bit crazy trying to hip fire this thing.
Mag's empty.
It's not really what it's for. It's really a mid-range to close mid-range to long range. But, yeah, I guess it's just a fast-paced sniper rifle, I suppose. But it does have some close range viability. Especially if you're a better shot than I am. Okay, moving on to the next weapon, we have the Epoch here. And if we hold the X, there's no change of fire rate or anything like that. This is the hip fire, and this is first person, which I can see is going to be a bit too annoying for people. Look at that. The drag is crazy. This weapon charges up similar to how the railgun does. And depending on how charged up it is how good of a result you'll get. Now, because it has the charge up trait, it can also overcharge, I'm pretty sure. Last time I tested it, I think that's what I noticed.
KIA deploying replacement.
So if you hold on to it too long, it will overcharge and blow you up. But if you want the most damage out of it, you are going to need to charge that sucker up until it's almost blown up in your hand. With more practice is going to come better understanding of when that threshold is about to get met. So I recommend that if you get this thing unlocked, you go ahead and test it quite a bit, maybe even on lower difficulties before hopping over to max difficulty. Alright, next up we have the grenade launcher here, which is a very nice explosive assault weapon, as you can imagine. For those of you that are big Halo 2 and Halo 3 fans with the brute shot, this is very similar to that. You can see the grenades are detonating on immediate impact wherever I hit them. However, depending on the surface, maybe I'll get one that's good. Sometimes it will bounce off of those, just like it did there. I guess that's typically these flat surface buildings, or maybe just at the right angle. So I suppose, depending on the angle, it will bounce off of those. So it bounced off over there. So keep that in mind. Depending on the angle, it could bounce right off of things. It just did there. Or it could just immediately blow up right where you shoot it. Now it is a grenade launcher, so it will pack quite a punch and have an explosive radius. And there's also something about this that's very similar to the anti-material rifle. Except it's not just semi-auto, it is full auto. You can just hold this sucker down and fire away. Now you can see here from the weapon options, you can switch to semi-auto fire, and that's me holding it down. So, it's pretty cool. I tend to leave it on auto. I feel like it doesn't fire more often than I need it to. It's not like hair trigger ready to just go. And having access to full auto is pretty nice sometimes. Now, this does have a great utility on top of just being able to blow stuff up. It can close bug holes, it can destroy factories for the automatons, it can destroy the warp ships of the Illuminate if their shield is down. You can also do a good job of destroying the shield of the warp ships. Yeah, so the grenade launcher is a lot of fun. You can see that you can kind of run around with it pretty easily. It doesn't have the same kind of horrible drag that a lot of weapons do. It still has drag, but it's not, you know, like some of those rocket launchers. But I will say, if you want to master this weapon, the biggest thing to know is at what angles and what materials this will bounce right off of, and get good at recognizing which is which, because what you don't want to do
Last reload.
is end up firing this thing thinking it's going to bounce, and then it just blows up right in your face. Or really needing it to blow up right there, and instead it just deflects. Depending on the angle, you can kind of make it work for you. Okay, so that concludes these 4 weapons here. I'm going to go ahead and get back on the ship and cover the next 4. Alright, we are back on the ship in the lookout screen here. And if we move along to the next 4 weapons, we have the de-escalator, the sterilizer, the flamethrower, and the laser cannon. So first item to talk about here is the de-escalator. We're going to ignore the support weapon and Hellpod attributes because every one of these is going to have those. The de-escalator is explosive and medium armor penetrating. It is essentially a grenade launcher, except the grenades have electric shocks. It fires arc grenades, which can stun enemies, as well as shoot lightning bolts in every direction, which can bounce off of enemies onto new enemies, can fork off of them. So keep that in mind. This is even deadlier of a self-killing device or team-killing device than the grenade launcher. Next up we have the Sterilizer, which has the Caustic trait. This is essentially a flamethrower but for gas, and gas is really good on this game, I must say. But there are a couple reasons that this is not typically used as a weapon. One, it doesn't linger in an area, and two, there's a much better item to use if you want to gas your enemies, which is the gas backpack, leaving the support weapon open to whatever else you want. Typically, you don't want to double up on gas. You want to do something else with it. So, underutilized, still very good. Now, next up here we have the Flamethrower, which has the Incendiary trait. And as you can imagine, it is a flamethrower. Go figure. And then the last of these four that we're going to cover now is the Laser Cannon. Now this has heavy armor penetrating, heat, and beam. And this is basically a giant laser. And I love it. This is one of my absolute favorite support weapons, especially against the automatons. I cannot recommend it enough against them. The fact that this has sustained heavy armor penetration with absolutely no recoil because it's a beam weapon makes it kind of obscene. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and select these, and I'll go ahead and get a mission, and see you guys there. Alright, we are in game now, and I'm going to start this off with the de-escalator. See, there's some drag, but not much. This is the hip fire, and this is with the scope. Not much of one. If we look at weapon options, we have the auto and semi-auto, just like the regular grenade launcher. And what a lovely bunch of enemies. And as you can see, it did a large static shock against the enemies there. That's fantastic. Pretty much obliterated that with the explosiveness of it. This is a very powerful, very fun weapon, and I have seen it absolutely demolish a couple of things that looks like it normally should not. The fact that it does electric damage gives it a little bit of an edge over the regular grenade launcher, because I think this has both the explosive damage as well as the electric damage, making it a little bit more powerful. Very, very good weapon. Highly recommend it. Just know, give your teammates a heads up if you're going to pick this so they can stand clear. This is a very, very, very team-killy weapon. Okay, next up we have the Sterilizer. And I'll go ahead and fire some up here. You can see there's a gas that is coming out of this, but it does not leave a trail on the ground. And if we check weapon options, there's not much of one. I am showing just the hip fire. I don't think I have ever seen anyone scope in with this weapon before. Typically, you want to know everything that's around you, and some people don't even scope in. You really want to see what's around them. As you can see, the range on this is not much, so you do need to get kind of up close and personal, but the weapon itself kind of offsets that risk because the enemies become blinded and confused. And lovely. A couple of enemies have popped up just in time for me to demo it. Now, I do think this is a particularly effective weapon against bugs, but not so much against automatons or some of the Illuminati. The effects of the gas last for a while, and they are damaging enough to take out some enemies pretty well. But as you can see, I just kind of sprayed them and hosed them once and then backed off and maybe applied a little bit more again. The enemies are still kind of dangerous. They will attack blindly at just about anywhere, so they can definitely still at least look like they're chasing you. It seems like for the most part they don't hear you when you're running around and they're confused like that. So this is a decent weapon for sure. You can really rely on the blinding and confusion for this to work out really well. You can zap your teammates, but you will not blind them or confuse them. You'll just damage them over time. There's an armor passive that offsets that damage, so perhaps an entire team of gassed up Helldivers could be really, really fun. I do think this is a good weapon, though there are several other things you can use, and I definitely would not use a short-ranged weapon like this against the Automaton, and maybe not the Illuminate since there are flying Overseers, though this can be very effective against the hordes of Voteless. Alright, next up is essentially a very similar weapon. It does damage over time as well. It's held kind of the same, has the same kind of turret look. If I hold the X down, it also doesn't have any additional weapon traits to change, but it is a flamethrower, and it has a huge capacity of ammo. It does a lot of damage, and it leaves a fire trail if you look down. Now if you look up, there's not really going to be a fire trail on the ground, but it is something to note. Do not walk forward as you do that, or you're going to light yourself on fire. I would typically only walk backwards with the flamethrower, just to keep yourself safe. You can 100% kill your teammates with this. It does not have a stationary reload, so that's very convenient. Definitely helps with mobility and escape. And I think you guys may have noticed when I did light myself on fire, I was able to stop, drop, and put out the flames. So there's a little bit of stop, drop, go. Typically, when I'm using the flamethrower, I go side to side and backstep. What ends up happening is, towards the enemies that are trying to get me, walk right through the flames and end up killing themselves on it, which is very, very nice. And as you can probably put two and two together now, this is a very, very good area denial weapon. You can block off an entire corridor and not worry too much if anything's going to get through. Now it does suffer for a couple of different things. One is it doesn't have much of a range, and against something like the Bile Titans, it's very limited since they're kind of up there, and when you're close enough to get them with this, they are close enough to stomp on you to death, which is not ideal. But if you pair this, since you have an open backpack slot, with perhaps a hover pack, you can meet the Bile Titan face to face, unafraid that they're going to stomp on you, and roast them alive. I've done this several times. It is one of the most epic things you can do in this game. It is very, very fun, and lighting them on fire will do massive amounts of damage, and damage over time as they sit there in flames. Now, you may think that just putting the fire on the ground is the best way to damage things, but this flame here actually does quite a bit of damage while lighting them on fire. The damage over time being lit on fire is in addition to the damage of the actual flamethrower. So think of this as a very, very short range laser almost. Continuous fire over and over, it will damage them and it lights them on fire. This is one of my favorite weapons in the game, though it is very limited. I think it's most effective against the Terminids, very similar to Sterilizer. I don't think it's so good against the long-range automatons, and it has some middling performance against the Illuminate for the most part. You can get to those Overseers if you are fast enough and light them on fire, and they die very, very quickly when you do so. I've done this a couple of times. But this isn't particularly one of the best weapons to use against the Illuminate. Now, last but, oh my goodness, not least, is the laser cannon. And I'm so happy that there are bugs here. As you can see, this is so good. And you can see that it a little bit lights them on fire as well. Now this is one of those weapons that has a continuous fire rate and has the heat sink that will heat up over time, forcing you to reload it.
Mission at 30
But,
minutes remaining.
I'll show you quick, it's a very easy fix. Typically I will fire this until about now and let go and let it cool off. But if you don't, just know you have to reload it before you can fire it again. So if you find that you keep firing and nothing's happening, it's because it has overheated. All you have to do is hit the X button to reload, and you'll get a fresh one in and be able to start all over again. Now, this is part of a very lucrative option for a loadout, where you kind of go all lasers. If you have your primary weapon also be a laser weapon that has a heat sink option, you can swap between this and that one while they are overheated, and they'll cool down by the time you swap over. Very, very effective, very nice, but this thing really, really shines against the automatons. Sustained fire that has an obscene range. I mean, I'm hitting that building right there. I just destroyed that satellite right there. I'm pretty sure I can even hit the objective right there. The range on this is ridiculous, and there's no recoil whatsoever. It just goes wherever you want. You can hit the weak spots of just about all the automatons very, very consistently. And it's heavy armor penetration as well, so you can even hit where they're not weak and still kill them. Yep, this is one of my favorite weapons of all time. It's good against almost every single faction. I can't think of but a handful of situations where this isn't very good. It's good against hordes, it's good against heavily armored enemies, it's good against almost everything. Now, it isn't anti-tank penetration, so there are some enemies it can't penetrate, but it can light them on fire nonetheless with the sustained beam. This is still very, very good in those scenarios as well. Man, I freaking love this weapon. Can't recommend it enough. Please go get it. Okay. All that being said, let's move on to the next 4 weapons. Alright, we are back on the ship in the loadout menu. I'm going to pull up the last 4 weapons here. We have the Quasar Cannon, the Arc Thrower, the MLS 4X Commando, and the Expendable Anti-Tank. I will cover the traits of these 4 weapons real quick. The Quasar Cannon is anti-tank and has the charge-up capability, although it behaves very differently from the other charge-up weapons we have seen thus far. It doesn't blow you up, so that's very useful. Then we have the Arc Thrower here, which has charge-up as well, and it also doesn't blow you up. It's very good. It is a lightning firing weapon. It fires lightning bolts at enemies, which can ricochet and fork off of them to kill multiple enemies in one shot, and has a fairly decent range. It's actually kind of a mid-range weapon. Next up is the Commando. It has the anti-tank and expendable weapon traits. Now it is a laser-guided missile weapon, and it has 4 missiles. They are anti-tank. And it has a counterpart here with the expendable anti-tank, which has the traits expendable and anti-tank. Go figure. What makes this particular one unique amongst the support weapons is when you call it in, you get 2 of them, and both of these have a little bit of a different property. You may have seen from all of the support weapons thus far, the cooldown time for all of them is 410 seconds, and that is with ship upgrades. The best it's going to get is like 6.5 minutes. The Commando has a cooldown time of 1.5 minutes with all of the ship upgrades. And the expendable anti-tank has a magical cooldown time of 60 seconds, which means you'll see it quite a bit in a 40-minute match if you want it to be. Alright, so now that we've covered these, I'm going to go ahead and dive on in the game and kind of show this off and go over maybe a couple use cases. Alright, we are back in the game, and the first weapon up to cover is the Quasar Cannon. Now this has the charge up attribute. As you can see, there's not much we can do about it. It does have a very unique trait of having infinite ammo. And this is the equivalent of, for all of you Halo fans, the Spartan laser. This is the first person view here, not the best. But if I begin to charge it, once it reaches the end of its charge, it will automatically fire. And then you will see there is a cooldown that's going to start up where it won't fire again until that is over. Now, this is a great weapon. This is infinite ammo anti-tank weapon. It does have a decent cooldown. It doesn't have a great fire rate, which maybe is the biggest downside of the weapon, but it can more than make up for that in different ways. You saw the massive explosion over there. That's just one of many. We're going to transition to the arc thrower now. And as you can see, I fired one lightning, and it fired off and ricocheted all the way back there, and even killed the one that was back there. Not instantaneously, but over time, because the lightning ripped his body to shreds and caused him to bleed. This thing is one of my favorite weapons. I never used a scope. This is always just like this. It has a decent firing range, which you probably just saw. Probably too far. I think that's just a little too far. So range is about there. Let's say maybe 100 feet. Pretty decent. I'm a huge fan of this. One thing to note, though, if you are wielding this weapon, it absolutely does not care where the lightning goes once it hits its first target, except that it will be in the general direction that you're facing. It can and absolutely will shoot your teammates in one shot. I've seen this many, many times. Unfortunately. It's funny, but it is unfortunate. Alright, third weapon here is one of the expendable weapons. This is the Commando. And it comes actually with 4 rounds in it. They are laser guided. And so what that means is you get a little laser and you fire away. Now, laser guided does not mean heat seeking. It just means there's a laser showing you where it's going to go. And once it's done, you drop it on the ground, ready to call another one in when you need it. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the nice things about expendables after I show off the expendable anti-tank. See here, we have an okay aiming reticle. This is just as good. Third person. Once I fire, if I let go of the scope, just drops. Can, of course, fire and forget and move on. Now, what are the benefits of something that's expendable? Something that's just going to go away when you could get a support weapon that you can carry indefinitely. Especially both of these weapons that have infinite ammo. Well, remember when I was talking about the Stalwart and how that is some people's favorite primary weapon? Well, what happens when they encounter something that is a huge tank? Well, if you have the expendable anti-tank and you know that something is coming, dang it, Ion Storm, you could run around with your Stalwart, call in the anti-tank weapons, the expendables, drop it in, fire at all the other enemies, and then when the charger starts coming towards you, pick up the expendable anti-tank, fire that sucker right at it, kill it, grab the other one for the next anti-tank if it's there, and then when you're done with that, pick your Stalwart back up as your primary weapon and move on. So, the expendables have a use, and I do actually really like them. They are up there on some of my favorites. The downside is that you're taking up 2 stratagem slots with support weapons, which feels bad. Trust me, I know. But just think about this. If you're running the melee build and you have the flag of Super Earth, and you should, if you're patriotic at all, you absolutely should do this sometime. You could also call in the expendable support weapons and use those to take out things that you can't with the flag. That's a perfectly viable strategy and allows you to actually carry the flag with you the whole time and use it while still shoring up those little weaknesses that your build doesn't have access to counteract. So, I do like the expendables. It's particularly nice to have when you really want a support weapon, but it doesn't offer anti-tank. So keep all that in mind. Yeah, very, very good. Also, one thing I suppose I glossed over when I had the arc thrower out on the field, it is, I think, technically classified as medium armor penetration, but it will hit just about anything, and it will stun them. So even the big, bad, heavily tanky charger can get stun locked by an arc thrower. Fire rate lines up to where you can fire, fire, fire. You'll also notice this charges quite a bit faster as I keep firing it. See how fast it's charging up. Once those lines touch each other, it's ready to go. If I wait, you can see how long it charges originally. This is a great weapon. It can stun enemies. Unfortunately, right now, I'm fighting enemies that get one shot by it, so you can't see it. But it does stun. Just keep that all in mind, guys. And I think with that, that wraps up all of the showcasing of weapons, and I went over a couple of use cases as well. Alright guys, hopefully this was pretty informative. I'm going to go ahead and hop back to the ship. I'll see you there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video covering the support weapons that don't require backpack items. It is a little incomplete without the backpack item video, so please tune in for the next episode of From ODST to Helldiver, where I'm going to cover the backpack items that pair really well with these support weapons. And of course, good luck out there, guys. I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of From ODST to Helldiver. If you found any of the information in this video useful, please go ahead and leave a like. And if you have any questions about anything, you want some clarification, or maybe you want to sync up in-game, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and maybe I can add you. We can get a couple of games together. And if you want to see a couple of more videos like this, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? That would really be appreciated. And hopefully this video gets you guys a little bit more prepared for when this inevitably drops on the Xbox. I hope everybody watching sees so many similarities between the Helldivers and the ODSTs. They're pretty much doing all of the same things. And I do find this game is, without a doubt, one of the greatest Halo games in the last 10 years. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.